She came to return his stranger Sinel's wallet.
Then asked to marry.
She smiled at him every single day. She sat at his dinner table, laughed at his jokes, hugged him at every family gathering. And the entire time, she was planning to destroy his marriage from the inside, because the man her sister married was the same man she had wanted for herself. He trusted her completely. He never once suspected that the woman he called family was the one holding the knife. And when the truth finally came out, it wasn't just a marriage that nearly fell apart. It was a family that would never look at each other the same way again. Stay with me until the end, because what this sister did, and what it cost her, is something you will not see coming. Daniel Carter was 34 years old, and by every outward measure, his life looked complete. He had built a career in commercial architecture from nothing, starting as a junior draftsman sketching other men's visions until, 10 years later, cities were building his own. He had a home on a quiet street lined with maple trees, the kind of house people slowed their cars down to admire. He had discipline, patience, and a quiet confidence that made people trust him the moment he spoke. But none of that was what Daniel was most proud of. What Daniel was most proud of was Emma. Emma Carter, 32, was a pediatric nurse, warm, sharp-witted, endlessly patient with everyone except herself. She had a laugh that filled a room and a way of remembering the smallest details about the people she loved. 6 years into their marriage, Daniel still felt something settle in his chest every time she walked through the door. They weren't a perfect couple. No couple is. There had been arguments about money in the early years, disagreements about whose family to spend the holidays with, the slow adjustment of two independent people learning how to share a single life. But underneath all of it was something Daniel never once doubted: Emma loved him, fully and without condition. Or so he believed. Emma had a younger sister, Sophia, 28, and from the outside, Sophia looked like the kind of sister every family wanted. She was clever, magnetic, the person who made every gathering livelier the moment she walked in. She worked in marketing, dated often, and always seemed to be between one exciting thing and the next. She was also a constant presence in Daniel and Emma's life. Sophia came over for Sunday dinners. She house-sat when they traveled. She was there for birthdays, for late-night phone calls, for the small ordinary Tuesdays that make up a family. Daniel had never thought twice about her closeness. She was Emma's sister. Of course she was around. What Daniel didn't know, what he couldn't have known, because Sophia made sure of it, was that somewhere over the past 3 years, her feelings for him had shifted into something she was ashamed of and unable to stop. It hadn't happened all at once. It had crept in slowly, the way these things often do. A conversation that lasted a little too long. A moment when Daniel remembered something small about her life that even her own boyfriends had forgotten. A quiet evening when he drove 2 hours to help her move apartments without being asked twice. Sophia told herself, again and again, that what she felt was nothing. Admiration. Gratitude. The kind of closeness that comes from being around a good brother-in-law for years. But watching Daniel and Emma together, watching the ease between them, the small private jokes, the way Daniel's hand found the small of Emma's back without either of them noticing he'd done it, something in Sophia curdled every time. She wanted to be the one he reached for like that, and the longer she carried the feeling in silence, the more it stopped feeling like something she could control. By the time Sophia made her decision, she had convinced herself of something dangerous, that Daniel and Emma's marriage was not as solid as it looked. That surely, if it were truly unbreakable, she wouldn't feel what she felt. That maybe, just maybe, Daniel was meant for her, and fate simply had the order wrong. It is a strange thing, the stories we tell ourselves to make cruelty feel like destiny. The evening it started, Daniel was in his home office, the door half open, papers spread across his desk under the warm light of a single lamp. Emma was at the hospital, covering a late shift. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator down the hall. A soft knock at the doorframe pulled him out of his work. "Hey," Sophia said. "Got a minute?" Daniel looked up, waving her in without hesitation. Sophia dropping by unannounced was nothing new. Sure. Everything okay? She sat down across from him, and something in the way she held herself made Daniel set his pen down. Her fingers were laced together tightly, twisting. I don't really know how to say this, she said. Daniel felt the first small prickle of unease. You're kind of scaring me. What's going on? Sophia looked at the floor, then back up at him, her eyes glassy in the lamplight. It's about Emma. Daniel's stomach tightened, though he couldn't yet say why. What about her? Sophia hesitated, a hesitation that, to Daniel, looked exactly like reluctance. In reality, it was calculation, the last small pause before she stepped over a line she could never fully step back from. I think she's seeing someone, Sophia said quietly. Another man. The words landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Daniel let out a short breath, almost a laugh, the kind of reflexive disbelief that comes before the mind has caught up. That's not, Sophia, that's not funny. I'm not joking. Her voice cracked slightly, practiced just enough to sound real. I wouldn't say this if I wasn't sure. Sure of what, exactly? Daniel's pulse had started to climb, despite himself. Sophia reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, turning it in her hands but not yet showing him the screen, a small, deliberate withholding that made whatever she was about to say feel heavier. I've seen her. More than once. Meeting someone. Texting constantly, then putting her phone away the second I walked in. Meeting who? I don't know his name, Sophia said. I just know it's not you she's with. Daniel stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Emma tells me where she is. Always. She's not like that. I know how it sounds, Sophia said softly. I didn't want to believe it either. But I couldn't keep pretending I hadn't seen what I saw. You deserve to know. There it was, the phrase designed to sound like loyalty. You deserve to know. It was the kind of sentence that made betrayal feel like an act of love. Daniel sat back down slowly, his hands pressed flat against the desk as if the room itself had tilted. 6 years of trust does not collapse in a single conversation. But it can crack. And once a crack exists, doubt finds every way in. I need to think, he said quietly. Sophia reached out and touched his arm, just briefly. I'm sorry. I hate that I'm the one who had to tell you. She left the office a few minutes later, and if Daniel had looked up at the right moment, he might have caught the expression on her face as she walked down the hallway, not sorrow, but something closer to relief. The first stone had been thrown. Now she only had to wait for the ripples to spread. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay beside Emma when she finally came home near midnight, exhausted from her shift, and he said nothing. He watched the ceiling instead, replaying every dinner, every late night at the hospital, every time Emma had said she was, with a coworker, or running errands. Suspicion has a cruel talent for turning ordinary memories into evidence. By morning, Emma noticed immediately that something was wrong. You're quiet, she said, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter to him. You okay? I'm fine, Daniel said, not meeting her eyes. Emma studied him for a moment, the way she studied her patients when something didn't add up, carefully, instinctively. You don't seem fine. Just a rough night. Didn't sleep much. She let it go, though her eyes lingered on him a second longer before she grabbed her bag and left for work. Daniel spent that day unable to concentrate. He sat in meetings and heard almost nothing that was said. He found himself, more than once, opening his phone and staring at his last text exchange with Emma, searching the ordinary words, love you, running late, pick up milk, for some hidden second meaning that wasn't there. Over the following days, the distance between them grew, quietly and steadily. Daniel became shorter in his answers. He stopped reaching for her hand out of habit. He found reasons to stay late at the office, not because he had work, but because he didn't know how to sit across from her without the question burning in his throat. Emma felt it long before she understood it. "You've been acting strange all week," she said one evening, standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, not in anger, but in the particular worry of someone watching a relationship slip without knowing why. "Have I?" Daniel said. "Yes. You know you have." He wanted, more than anything, to simply ask her. "Is there someone else? Tell me the truth and I'll believe you." But something held him back, not just fear of the answer, but fear of what it would mean about him if he had to ask at all. Somewhere in his mind, a quieter, crueler voice had already started to whisper that a man who has to ask is a man who has already lost. He didn't yet realize that voice wasn't his own. It was the seed Sophia had planted, growing roots in the dark. And Sophia, watching all of this unfold from just close enough to see it happen, was not finished. Over the next several days, she found small, careful moments to feed the doubt she had planted, a comment here, a sympathetic glance there, never so much that it looked deliberate, always just enough to keep the wound open. "You seem tired," she told him one afternoon, when she'd stopped by under the excuse of returning a borrowed book. "Is everything okay with you and Emma?" "We're fine," Daniel said, though his voice lacked conviction even to his own ears. "You don't have to pretend with me," Sophia said gently. "I just want you to know, whatever happens, you deserve someone who actually chooses you. Every day. Not someone who makes you wonder." It was a strange kind of poison, the kind that doesn't taste bitter at all. It tasted like comfort. Like someone finally understanding him. Daniel didn't know it yet, but he was standing at the edge of a decision that would either save his marriage or shatter it completely, and the person whispering in his ear the loudest was the very person who wanted it broken 2 weeks after that first conversation in his office. Sophia came to the house again. Emma was working a double shift and wasn't expected home until well past 9. Daniel had just finished making dinner for one when he heard the front door open. Sophia still had a key from years of house-sitting, a small trust that suddenly felt significant. "I brought food," she said, holding up a paper bag, though her eyes said she'd come for something else entirely. "Thought you shouldn't eat alone again." They sat at the kitchen table together, and for a while, the conversation was easy, familiar, even. It was the kind of comfort that made Daniel forget, just for an hour, the storm sitting in his chest. Then Sophia set down her fork, and her voice changed. "Can I say something? And you have to let me finish before you react." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Okay. I've watched you these past few weeks," she said. "I've watched you fall apart quietly, trying to hold everything together, and it's killing me." She paused, her hands trembling slightly, though whether from nerves or from the weight of what she was about to say, even she couldn't have said for certain. "If you left her, if this really is what I think it is, I would be there. I've loved you for a long time, Daniel. Longer than I should have." The words hit the room like a held breath finally released. Daniel stared at her, and for one long, terrible moment, he said nothing at all. Because somewhere underneath the shock, underneath the disbelief, there was something else stirring, something dangerous. A man wounded by doubt is a man vulnerable to comfort, and comfort had just placed itself directly in front of him, wearing the face of someone he had trusted for 6 years. He stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled. "Sophia. You're my wife's sister." "I know," she whispered. "You can't say things like that to me." "I know it's wrong," she said, her voice breaking, tears rising fast and convincingly to her eyes. "But I can't keep pretending anymore. I can't keep watching you hurt and say nothing." Daniel walked to the far side of the kitchen, putting distance between them, his hands pressed against the counter as if he needed something solid to hold on to. His mind was a storm of anger, confusion, and something he hated himself for feeling at all, the smallest, faintest flicker of temptation, born entirely out of loneliness and doubt. He didn't get the chance to answer her. Because at that exact moment, the front door opened. Emma stood in the doorway, home 3 hours earlier than expected, her coat still on, her keys still in her hand, and her eyes moving slowly, carefully, from her husband's face to her sister's tear-streaked one. "What," Emma said quietly, "is going on here?" Neither of them answered. And in the silence that followed, Daniel understood, with a sick and sudden clarity, that whatever happened in the next 60 seconds would change all three of their lives forever. The silence in that kitchen lasted only a few seconds. But for Daniel, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, watching the ground crumble beneath his feet in slow motion. Emma's eyes moved between them, her husband, pale and frozen by the counter, and her sister, tears still wet on her cheeks, standing far too close to him for anything about this to look innocent. "Someone," Emma said, her voice low and dangerously calm, "is going to tell me what is happening in my kitchen right now. If you think you know how this ends, stay with me, because the truth that comes out next isn't the one either sister expected, and it changes everything you thought you understood about this family." Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. There were no words that made this look like anything other than what it appeared to be. He glanced at Sophia, waiting, hoping, in some small, desperate corner of his mind, that she would say something to fix it. Sophia said nothing. She only wiped her eyes and looked away. Emma set her keys down on the counter with a deliberate, controlled motion, the kind of stillness that comes right before someone's composure breaks completely. "Daniel. It's not what it looks like," Daniel finally managed, though even to his own ears the words sounded hollow, the oldest excuse in the world. "Then tell me what it looks like," Emma said. "Because from where I'm standing, my sister is crying in my kitchen, and my husband looks like he's just been caught doing something he shouldn't." Daniel dragged a hand down his face. He had spent 2 weeks carrying a secret he didn't fully understand himself, the seed of doubt Sophia had planted, the distance it had grown between him and Emma, and now, finally, the confession Sophia had just made to him minutes before Emma walked in. He realized, with a sinking feeling, that there was no way to explain any of it without saying all of it. "She told me something," Daniel said slowly. "A few weeks ago. About you." Emma's brow furrowed. "About me?" she said. Daniel stopped, glancing at Sophia, who would not meet his eyes. "She said you were seeing someone else. That you'd been meeting another man behind my back." For a moment, Emma didn't move at all. Then something shifted in her expression, not the guilt Daniel had feared for 2 agonizing weeks, but something closer to disbelief, and beneath that, a slow-burning anger. "I'm sorry," Emma said quietly. "Say that again." "She said you were unfaithful," Daniel repeated, his voice smaller now. "That you'd been texting someone, meeting him when I wasn't around." Emma turned to look at her sister for the first time since walking through the door. Sophia had gone very still, the way a person goes still when they realize the ground they've been standing on is no longer solid. "Sophia," Emma said. "Is that true?" Sophia started. "Is that true?" Emma's voice cracked on the last word, not from sadness, but from the force of trying to hold back something much larger. Sophia shook her head, but it wasn't a clear denial. It was the reflex of someone caught between the lie she had built and the truth now standing directly in front of her. "I saw things," she said weakly. "I thought." "You thought," Emma repeated. "You thought I was cheating on my husband, and instead of asking me, instead of talking to your own sister, you went to him. Alone. And told him I was unfaithful." The kitchen had gone terribly quiet. Even the refrigerator's low hum seemed to fade beneath the weight of what was happening. "I was trying to protect him," Sophia said, and even as the words left her mouth, they sounded thin, like fabric stretched too far. "Protect him," Emma said, almost laughing, though there was no humor in it at all. "From what, exactly? From a lie you made up?" Daniel stepped forward. "Emma, I need you to tell me the truth. Right now. Is there someone else?" Emma turned to him, and for the first time, Daniel saw something in her eyes that frightened him more than any confession could have, not guilt, but hurt. Deep, genuine hurt, the kind that comes from being doubted by the one person who was supposed to know you best. 6 years, Emma said quietly. 6 years, and you believed her over me. You didn't ask me. You didn't call me at work and say, Emma, is this true? You just believed it. You let it sit in your chest for 2 weeks and turn you into someone I don't recognize. I didn't know what to believe, Daniel said, his voice breaking. You've been distant too. I thought. I've been distant, Emma said, because you've been distant. Because for 2 weeks you've barely looked at me, and I didn't know why, and I was terrified I was losing you and had no idea what I'd done. The truth of it landed on Daniel like a physical blow. He had spent 2 weeks suspecting Emma of betrayal, and in doing so, he had created the very distance he feared, a distance that had nothing to do with any other man, and everything to do with the doubt someone else had planted in his mind. Emma pulled her phone from her coat pocket, her hands not quite steady. You want to know who I've been talking to? Who I've been meeting? She turned the screen toward him. A long thread of messages filled the display, dates, times, a name Daniel didn't recognize, Dr. Whitfield. That's Dr. Whitfield, Emma said. He runs the pediatric oncology unit at the hospital. For the last 2 months, I've been helping him organize a fundraising program for children with cancer, kids whose families can't afford the treatments insurance won't cover. I've been meeting with him during my breaks. Texting him constantly because we're trying to get this program running before the holidays. Her voice wavered, tears finally slipping free. I didn't tell you because I wanted it to be a surprise. I was going to ask you to help me design the fundraiser event. I wanted you to be part of it. Daniel felt the floor drop out from beneath him for the second time that night, this time, from the weight of his own mistake. Emma, don't, she said, holding up a hand. Not yet. She turned back to her sister, and the anger that had been simmering beneath her hurt finally rose fully to the surface. You knew, Emma said. You knew I would never do that to Daniel. You've known me my whole life. So this was never about protecting him. This was about something else. Sophia's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled freely now, no longer the careful, practiced kind. I love him, she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I have for years. I watched the two of you and I couldn't stand it anymore. I thought if you were gone, if there was even a small crack, maybe. Maybe what? Emma's voice was shaking now, disbelief and heartbreak tangled together. Maybe he'd choose you? You tried to destroy my marriage because you wanted my husband? I didn't want to hurt you, Sophia whispered. You didn't want to get caught, Emma said. There's a difference. Daniel stood frozen between the two women, the full shape of the last 2 weeks finally visible to him, every doubt, every distant evening, every quiet accusation whispered under the guise of concern. It had all been built, brick by brick, by the person standing across the kitchen from him now. The comments, Daniel said slowly, almost to himself. You deserve someone who chooses you. The dinners. The books you kept bringing over. He looked at Sophia, and something in his expression shifted from confusion to something colder. You weren't protecting me. You were building something. This whole time. Sophia said nothing. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't confirm exactly what he'd just realized. I trusted you, Daniel said quietly. I let you into my house. I let you sit at my table. I never once thought, he stopped, shaking his head. I never once thought the person lying to me was you. I was desperate, Sophia said. No, Daniel said, his voice hard now, the softness gone completely. You were selfish. You saw something good and you decided you were entitled to take it apart. Emma wiped her face with the back of her hand, composing herself with the same steady resolve she used every day walking into a hospital room to deliver hard news to frightened families. I think you should go, she said to her sister. Now. Sophia looked at Daniel one last time, as though hoping for something, forgiveness, understanding, anything. She found none. She left without another word, the front door closing behind her with a soft, final click that somehow felt louder than any slammed door could have. For a long moment, Daniel and Emma stood alone in the kitchen, the space between them filled with everything that had just happened. "I should have trusted you," Daniel finally said. "I should have called you. I should have asked." "You should have," Emma agreed, her voice quieter now, exhausted rather than angry. "But I understand why you didn't." "You do?" "I do," Emma said. "Doubt doesn't wait for evidence, Daniel. It just needs a small opening. And she gave you one, carefully, over and over, until it felt real." "That doesn't excuse it," Daniel said. "No," Emma agreed. "It doesn't. But it explains it. And there's a difference between an excuse and an explanation." Daniel crossed the kitchen and reached for her hands, and this time, Emma let him take them. "I almost let someone else's lie destroy 6 years of us," he said. "I keep thinking about how close I came to believing her completely. How close I came to saying something I could never take back." "But you didn't," Emma said. "You came back. You asked. Eventually. Eventually isn't good enough." "No," Emma said, managing a small, tired smile. "But it's something to build from." They stood there a long while, neither speaking, simply holding on to each other in the quiet aftermath of a storm that had nearly swept everything away. But even as the tension between them began to ease, a new and heavier question settled over the house, one that neither of them said out loud yet, though both were already thinking it. Sophia wasn't just an outsider who had told a lie. She was family. She would be at the next holiday dinner, the next birthday, the next quiet Sunday gathering, unless something changed. And somewhere across town, sitting alone in her apartment with mascara-streaked cheeks and a heart full of humiliation and something far darker, Sophia was not finished either. Because people who build a lie that big rarely walk away quietly when it collapses. What Daniel and Emma didn't yet know was that Sophia's confession in that kitchen was not the end of what she was willing to do to get what she wanted. It was only the beginning of the consequences, for all three of them. Some lies end the moment they are exposed. Others leave a mark that takes months, even years, to fade. What happened next in Daniel and Emma's family would teach both of them something about trust, forgiveness, and the quiet courage it takes to choose truth over comfort, again and again, long after the storm has passed. Stay until the end, because what Daniel and Emma built out of the wreckage of that one terrible night is something every single one of us can learn from. The days after Sophia left were quiet in a way that felt strange rather than peaceful. Daniel kept replaying the conversation in the kitchen, turning it over in his mind like a stone he couldn't put down. Emma went back to her hospital shifts, back to Dr. Whitfield's fundraiser, back to the rhythm of ordinary life. But underneath the routine, something had shifted in both of them, and they knew it. A week later, Daniel's phone rang. It was his mother-in-law, Carol, her voice tight with confusion. "Sophia told me you and Emma are having problems," Carol said. "She said she's been trying to help you two through it." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. He had known this call was coming eventually. Sophia was not the kind of person to simply disappear after being caught. She would try to control the story before anyone else could tell it. "Carol," Daniel said carefully, "I think you need to hear the whole truth, not just Sophia's version of it. Can Emma and I come by this weekend? Together?" There was a pause on the line. "That sounds serious." "It is," Daniel said. "But it's better coming from us than from anyone else." That weekend, Daniel and Emma sat across from Carol at her kitchen table, the same kind of table where, weeks earlier, a lie had first taken root in Daniel's mind. This time, they told the truth together, taking turns, filling in each other's gaps, correcting each other gently when memory blurred a detail. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't ask Carol to choose a side. They simply laid out what had happened, plainly and honestly, and let her draw her own conclusions. Carol sat in silence for a long moment after they finished. Her hands were folded tightly on the table, her eyes distant. "I raised both my daughters to be honest," she finally said, her voice thick. "I don't know where I went wrong with her." "You didn't go wrong," Emma said gently, reaching across the table to take her mother's hand. "Sophia made a choice. That choice belongs to her, not to you." It was a small moment, but an important one, because in it, Emma showed Daniel something he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Even in her own pain, even after being falsely accused and nearly losing her marriage, Emma chose grace over blame. She did not use her mother's guilt as a weapon. She simply told the truth and let people find their own way through it. That is a rare kind of strength, the strength to be honest without being cruel, to hold someone accountable without needing to destroy them in the process. In the weeks that followed, the family slowly, carefully, began to rebuild. Sophia did not attend the next family dinner. She sent a single message to Emma, 3 lines, an apology that read more like an excuse than an admission, and then went quiet for a long while. Daniel heard, secondhand, that she had moved to a different city for work. Whether that was true, or simply a way of disappearing from a story she no longer controlled, no one was entirely sure. But Daniel and Emma had their own work to do, work that had nothing to do with Sophia at all. One evening, several weeks after that night in the kitchen, Daniel sat down across from Emma at their dining table, not his office, not the kitchen counter where everything had unraveled, but the table where they had eaten 1,000 ordinary dinners together over 6 years of marriage. "I want to tell you something," he said. "And I need you to let me finish, even if it's hard to hear." Emma nodded, waiting. "For 2 weeks, Daniel said, I let doubt live in this house instead of you. I let a version of you that Sophia invented sit between us, and I didn't even realize I was doing it until it nearly cost us everything. I keep asking myself why I didn't just pick up the phone and ask you directly. And the honest answer is, I was afraid. I was afraid that asking would make it real, somehow. That not asking meant I could still pretend everything was fine. That's not how trust works, though," Emma said softly. "I know that now," Daniel said. "Trust isn't the absence of doubt. It's what you do with the doubt when it shows up. And I handled it wrong. I let silence do the talking instead of you." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "I forgive you," she said. "Not because what happened didn't hurt, it did, more than I think I've even let myself feel yet. But because I watched you come back. I watched you choose me, even after everything. That matters more to me than the mistake itself. I don't want to be the kind of person who needs someone else's lie to remind him what he already has," Daniel said. "I don't want to almost lose you again." "Then don't let doubt sit quietly next time," Emma said. "Say it out loud. Ask me. Even if the question is hard. Even if you're scared of the answer. A hard question asked out loud will never do as much damage as a silent doubt left to grow in the dark." It was a simple truth, but one that would stay with Daniel for the rest of his life, the idea that the real danger in any relationship is rarely the doubt itself. It is what we do with that doubt in silence, the stories we build alone in our own minds, the conclusions we draw before we ever ask the person standing right in front of us. 6 months later, Daniel and Emma hosted a small fundraiser dinner at their home, the very event Emma had been secretly planning with Dr. Whitfield all along, the one whose secrecy had nearly cost them everything. It raised enough money to cover treatment costs for 11 children whose families could not otherwise afford it. Daniel stood at the front of the room that night and spoke for a few minutes about how proud he was of his wife, not just for organizing the event, but for the quiet, steady kind of love she had shown him through the hardest month of their marriage. "There's a kind of love," Daniel told the small crowd gathered in his living room, "that only proves itself under pressure. Anyone can love someone when everything is easy. It's what you do when the ground shifts beneath you, when doubt creeps in, when someone tries to pull you apart, that tells you what your love is really made of." He looked at Emma across the room, and she smiled at him the way she had on their wedding day, 6 years earlier, before any of this had happened. Later that night, after the guests had gone home, Daniel and Emma sat together on their back porch, the same porch where they had spent countless ordinary evenings over the years, watching the sky change color as the sun went down. "Do you ever think about her?" Daniel asked quietly. "Sophia?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I don't hate her. I think I just feel sad for her. She wanted something so badly that she was willing to destroy everything around her to get it, and in the end, she ended up with nothing. No sister. No family dinners. Not even the man she thought she wanted, because the version of him she wanted never really existed. She wanted a Daniel who would leave his wife on a whisper of doubt. But that was never really who you were." "I could have been," Daniel admitted quietly. "For a moment, I almost was." "But you weren't," Emma said. "That's the part that matters." They sat together in comfortable silence as the last light faded from the sky, and Daniel found himself thinking about everything the past 6 months had taught him, lessons he never would have chosen to learn this way, but ones he was grateful, in the end, to have learned at all. He learned that trust is not something you build once and then forget about. It is something you choose again, every single day, especially on the days it would be easier not to. He learned that the people closest to us are sometimes the ones capable of hurting us the most, not because they are strangers wearing masks, but because closeness gives people access to the softest, most unguarded parts of us. He learned that silence is rarely neutral. When doubt enters a relationship and is met with silence instead of honesty, it does not disappear. It grows, quietly, in the dark, until it becomes something much larger and much harder to undo, and most of all, he learned that real love is not the love that never faces a test. It is the love that faces the test, bends under the weight of it, and still finds its way back to solid ground. If you take one thing away from Daniel and Emma's story, let it be this: the strongest relationships are not the ones where doubt never appears. Doubt will always find its way in, whispered by someone else's jealousy, planted by misunderstanding, or simply born from our own fears. The strongest relationships are the ones where two people choose honesty over assumption, communication over silence, and grace over blame, again and again, especially when it is hardest to do so. If someone you love ever plants a seed of doubt in your mind about someone you trust, remember Daniel's mistake, and do the one thing he wishes he had done sooner. Ask. Speak the fear out loud instead of letting it grow in silence. The truth, even when it is uncomfortable, will always be a safer place to stand than an assumption built in the dark. And if you have ever been hurt by someone close to you, a friend, a family member, someone who was supposed to protect you and instead tried to take something from you, know that healing from that kind of betrayal takes time. It takes patience with yourself and with the people you choose to keep close. But as Daniel and Emma discovered, what is built again after being tested honestly can end up stronger than what existed before. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it moved you, if it made you think about trust, family, or the quiet courage it takes to ask a hard question instead of carrying a silent doubt, share it with someone who needs to hear it, like this story, and subscribe for more stories like Daniel and Emma's, where love is tested, truth always finds its way to the surface, and the people who choose honesty are the ones who come out stronger on the other side.